Here you can kind of see what it looks like when it's all laid out together on the belt. Just super helpful for any of the tasks that you might have to do so that you can get the needle perfectly flat. Hello, welcome to Waypoint Survival. Today we're going to talk about a vintage leather belt survival kit. We've got a lot of great items in here. I think you're going to like it, so stay tuned. Part of vintage camping and doing living history requires that we not only carry the gear, but also wear some of the clothing items that our forefathers wore as they were out into the woods and the fields, the forests and the mountains and valleys of 100 years ago or so. So this is why we dress in period-appropriate gear, because it's not just enough to put on a t-shirt, jeans, and a pair of tennis shoes and go trekking across country in some modern comfort. We are looking to recreate as much as we can of the total experience of those who went before us, those who literally were the pioneers of camping and bushcraft and woodcraft. So let's get to that right now. The first thing you're going to notice is that I am wearing a campaign hat. Now, this is not a military hat. It's actually for a scoutmaster, for the Boy Scouts. And of course, there were a lot of crossover. People who served in the military went back and served in the Boy Scouts. People who came up in the Boy Scouts often went on to join the military. And so these were very common, something that you would see a lot out into the back country. You didn't have to have military service to wear something like this. Again, a nice hat, shades you from the sun, takes care of a lot of issues in the rain as well. Nice broad brim, and just a really great hat overall to wear in the backcountry. Next, you'll notice that we're wearing a silk kerchief or neckerchief. This has 101 uses, again, much like a bandana, but used for mopping the face, for picking up pots and pans out of the fire by the handle. Just, again, a lot of things to do, and worn as part of the clothing accessories, much like you would a tie, just tied with a standard. You can tie it with a granny knot or an overhand knot, anything you want, but just something that makes it look nice and something that you keep it handy to you. We also have a very nice old vintage pair of binoculars. These are 3X. They're lightweight, they're small, but for glassing an area and for making sure that your camp is safe, or perhaps you're scouting an area, you're looking for game to hunt, and we're not carrying any sidearms or anything like that today. This is just sort of a scouting kit, something that you would wear to go around in the backcountry and perhaps to camp and spend a night if you had to. But again, this is something that would be very important for a woodsman of that era. Next, we have our Marbles knife. You can see this here. It is patented 1916. Just a great bushcraft knife, high carbon steel, will hold an incredibly keen edge. This is something that you would find on a leather belt kit from someone back in that era. The next item that we have is a small belt axe, sometimes known as a pocket axe. This is very small. Get it out there very carefully without cutting myself. But this weighs 12.3 ounces, so not even a full pound. It's got a really great shaped head on it for splitting wood. And I know there's a lot of bushcraft people that do woodcraft and camping. You know, they say, well, you can just use your knife for that. And yes, you can. But our forefathers knew that there was no substitute for a small belt axe. And again, this is super lightweight. It's very easy to carry. It's a high carbon steel bit on here. It holds a very keen edge. So this is again something that you would see our forefathers as they carried back out into the backcountry, the gear that they needed to sustain themselves. This would be great for making a bough bed from some sort of a coniferous tree, a pine or a cedar, something like that. This would also be good for processing game and for those things that you needed to split bones and things like that. Just super helpful for any of the tasks that you might have to do in the woods when it came to your camping chores. The next item that we have is our wool blanket. Now, you could roll up something inside of here, food, extra clothes, whatever, but we're going pretty light on this trip, and we've got most of our gear on the belt. And so this is just simply a bedroll with some leather straps. Just comes around the shoulder like so, and it's easy and light to carry. And as long as you're just going to camp cowboy style around a fire, this is really all you need to keep you nice and warm throughout the night. And because it's 100% wool, it will shed water even in a light storm and keep you fairly dry. So you could even set this up as a tarp shelter if you had to. The next item that we're carrying in this old saddlebag style case opens like this, is we have our canteen. This is something, of course, we can use to quench our thirst, to carry water over long distances, and something that would have been very easy to find as a new or surplus item for people who were hiking back in the classic era. We have one more item in this pouch, and it's pretty important, something that woodsmen would have started to carry, again, as we got into 19-teens and 20s, and especially into the 1930s, and that is our good, old-fashioned, solid, ever-ready flashlight. Takes D batteries and a simple screw-in bulb. This would be something that every woodsman would want to have. Again, you've got candles, you've got various things you can use to have light, but as soon as electric lights became possible, a lot of woodsmen started carrying these as a light just like we do today, because it's so much easier just to click the switch, turn on the light, and you're good to go. The belt that I'm carrying most of this gear on is known as a Sam Browne belt. And this goes back into the late 1800s and was used really all the way on up into the 20th century. And you many times will see even police officers in more modern times wearing something very similar to this. But it's a belt that has various loops, some brass hardware, things to fasten it onto, and it's wide enough that you can put a lot of things on there. It carries a lot of weight. You can put it through the strap up here, this epaulette on your shoulder. And yes, again, looks very good and carries very well. It helps you maintain the weight as you're walking on the trail, and it doesn't slip around and move around, and it was worn high-waisted in the small part of the waist. Now, many of these belt items you wouldn't necessarily need while you're walking in the forest. And so you would access these after you got to camp. There's a couple of items that we have close to hand that are important. One of them is right here. Very important to have a compass. And let you all see that date. This is just an older brass compass. It's pretty heavy, but you can see it's been around for almost 100 years. For those who couldn't read the date, it's 1926. Simply snaps open like this. And you've got your sighting instruments. See that? And it does work very well. Still rotates freely. It's your mirror, which is good for signaling or for first aid to your face or anything like that. On this side, it also has a flip-up sighting device. You can adjust that. It's got a little peephole there and your point for long-distance navigation. You can see how this looks like so. Different ways that you can sight in and travel should you need to. There's also a hole right here that you can sight through down low if you need to. It has two different types of leveling devices in here, a long level and then just a round bubble level. And this is to make sure that you're not torquing the compass one way or the other so that you can get the needle perfectly flat as you're navigating, so it's not binding the needle and giving you a false heading. The next leather pouch that we have on our belt is fairly important. Again, we're trying to schedule things around the belt, things that we need while we're walking and things that we won't need until we get to camp. This is sort of a mixture of both. The first item that we have is a little bag here with a drawstring on top, and inside just a regular old potato. And these were used a whole bunch by our camping pioneer ancestors because they're just easy to carry, they don't require refrigeration, and there's a lot of carbohydrates in here to keep you going. What the potato was sitting in is a little aluminum measuring cup. So this is really handy for making breads or anything like that if you decide to bring flour or some kind of a bread mix with you. It allows you to measure what you need. Different measurements on each side there, and you can see what that is. But anyway, this is super light. I mean, it weighs, I don't know, a couple ounces if that. And it's something you could carry. Again, I keep the potato stuck inside of it, just like this. The top folded over, the string tucked down, and that keeps it from rattling around and also provides a safe way to carry the potato without it getting all bruised and holes put in it from the rest of your gear. It's also important to have this close to hand. Not only do we have the canteen, but back in the day, a lot of people did drink just out of the creeks and the streams, and they would find springs. Remember, there wasn't as big a population as we have today, and so it was fairly safe in a lot of areas to scoop up some water and just take a drink. And so you would almost always see a small cup of some kind, even if you were carrying a canteen. The next couple of items are going to be easily recognized as very important to outdoorsmen even today. What we have here is we have a couple of pieces of cord. We have some thick cord, and then we have some thinner cord, but very strong. And this can be used for gear repair. It can be used, again, if we use our blanket, if we want to stretch it out as a sunshade or as a small tarp, we can do that. But we're going to need some cord. We're going to need something to tie things up with. Also, if we get some game, again, this is not a hunting outfit. We don't have any kind of firearm with us. But if we would, this is always ready. You can form a drag to pull the animal out of the woods, or, again, if it's something small like a squirrel or a rabbit, to suspend it on a tripod for processing. So, again, having cord, very, very important, and something that every good woodsman always has with him. For these last couple of items, I'm going to have to take off the belt to show you what's in there. So it's just held on. There's a little brass thing here, and I'm a bigger guy. A lot of people in the military back in the day, they're very small, very slender, and of course today we don't fit their things quite as well as they did, but it comes apart pretty easy. And then there's attachment here for the one side, and then the other side fastens right here in the back. You can see that. Here you can see what the belt looks like when it's off, when it's all laid out, and how the pouches are arranged in order. The next pouch we're going to look at is our sustainment pouch. And this is a hide and drink pouch. And it had these loops, which were absolutely perfect for fastening in a spoon and a fork. Inside the pouch, held in by a zipper, we have a nice leather bag, inside of which some good old beef jerky. This can be put in with the potatoes, either boiled or fried, and make a pretty good meal. Along with that, down here in the front, in this little pocket, a small brass tin, just lard. And that's what we use to cook in, to fry our potatoes in and all of that. And to fry things, we have our very small primitive frying pan with folding handle. You can put a stick in there to extend it out over a fire, or you can just use the handkerchief or neckerchief, grip it like this. But this is a classic design. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, perhaps even farther back than that. I've seen some folding frying pans that the Romans used. So this is an extremely old design, but very compact, very handy, and you can imagine has 101 uses, from boiling water to cleaning up to cooking your food. Again, just a lot of things you can do with this. The last item that we carry in here is a very small sharpening stone. Of course, you're not going to do a major amount of sharpening with this, but this is to keep a keen edge on both the knife and the small hatchet. Easily carried, and something that you can just use to brush up the edge when needed. The last pouch that we're going to look at is this right here, and it's got a unique pattern on it. This was formed by the process when they branded the cow. They left this unique pattern in the leather, and I bought this from Just a Nazarene Leather Company. So open it up like this, a bit of a bone there for a toggle, and inside we have some very important items. First of all, we have a very large, if I can get it out here, a very large burning lens. Magnifying glass, uses to start fires. Use that forever. They never wear out as long as there's good strong light. You can use this from the sun. Next, we have a good wax candle. This is something that you pretty well always saw people carry back in the day. Even though they had flashlights, they were used to using fires, and this would be your backup. A lot of things you can use this for, from coating your knife or hatchet blade to keep it from rusting, to lubricating zippers. But just a backup light, something you would also use in the wintertime to keep a small cave warm, a snow cave. You can also stick this in the ground, light it, and hunch over it with your wool blanket, which a lot of guys did, and this would provide enough heat to help keep you warm if the night turned chilly. Of course, we have to have our match safe, and these came in different shapes and sizes and made by different companies. But just simply some strike anywhere matches, and when this is screwed shut, very watertight. Next, we have an old liniment or mentholated ointment tin. And this is very handy because inside we have some tulip poplar bark, and I find that it's very easy to carry it rolled up. You simply take your tulip poplar bark and do it like this in a circle until it becomes a nice tight wad, and then it's an easy thing to tease it and pull it apart just like this. When you get ready to start your fire as your tinder, it kind of tends to fall apart and get stuff all over the place like this. But if you'll just take it, roll it like so, it tends to stay together really well, and you can carry that pretty easy down in here. So we've got some loose, and we've got 3 large balls of this tinder. We have some charred wood here, and then we have this handy little item. And this tin is very old, dates back to the 18th century. But remember that the people who went out into the woods, they also inherited things from their parents and grandparents, and something small and compact that would fit easily in your pocket would have definitely been saved and taken care of and passed down. And this is simply a tin that carries a small striker, some charred cloth, and a couple of pieces of flint. So this little kit, placed in the tin, and then a tight-fitting lid, would go pretty far distance to keep your stuff dry, even if you were in a rain or if you fell in a creek, something like that. Obviously, a prolonged submerging would not keep it dry, but generally speaking, unless you get into a catastrophic circumstance, this is going to keep your fire kit in usable condition. And we also have our puttees, as well as our ankle-length boots. Help protect our feet and legs. This, of course, from briars and thorns, and keeps dirt and things out of here. And this is something that was very commonly worn in the early 1900s on through the 20s and 30s. And you see a lot of outdoorsmen that would wear this, including George Washington Sears, known as Nessmuk. We see him wearing things like this. So this is what it looks like when it's all put back together. Give you a good idea again how it's carried. Our bedroll, get it out of the way. You can see the pouches. It's very simple and very easy to carry. I don't know exactly how much it weighs, I didn't weigh it, but I would say between 15, 18 pounds, something like that. But the way that the weight is distributed and carried, you don't really feel it very much. It's actually very lightweight, and I can see why people would want to carry a kit like this and why it would make camping so much better. If I were to add something to it from a modern perspective, I would have some sort of a lightweight tarp to go with this. So along with the bag or the blanket, you can make a sleeping bag out of it, but you could easily have a good night's rest even if it started to rain. This is James Bender for Waypoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. While you're down there, you'll also find our waypointsurvival.com link. And this is where you can sign up to take survival and bushcraft classes at our beautiful training facility in Southern Ohio. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos, and we'll talk to you next time.